Okay, we're going to have a conversation about supervision, supervision for hypnotherapists. What would the point of it be, what would the value of it be, and how can it help? First of all, what is supervision? And supervision is a space where you can sit and discuss with somebody who's trained as a supervisor your work and how you're engaging with your clients, maybe your techniques, strategies, clients that you get stuck with. So it's a space for you to learn in, a space where you can, I suppose, examine through reflecting on what you've been doing, or maybe trying to understand maybe what's not going well. So it's looking at what's going well and what else would help you to develop as a practitioner. So that's, I suppose, the main part of supervision really is the learning of the supervisee. And that takes place, I suppose, in different ways. We have the reflective part, where you look at your work with your clients. And then in supervision, you have the reflexive part, which is looking at yourself as a practitioner, your style, your skills, how you may be putting your sessions together, the impact of the work on yourself, which quite often is outside of conscious awareness. So when you're working with clients, quite often, you might find yourself with a client who you're quite friendly with, or they're quite warm, and so you can get into a very cozy relationship, and that relationship then might become ineffective, where you begin to maybe become, I suppose, ineffective, where you might not challenge your client around things that are very obvious to you, or you might be enabling them to continue with what they're doing because you're not challenging any of their behaviours or feelings or any of that stuff. So I suppose it's about helping you to recognise those aspects of your work, and then also where you maybe find a client that's challenging or difficult, to look at the dynamic of the relationship there. What's happening between me and this client in the relationship? And what's important in supervision, I think quite often, is that what happens between the client and the hypnotherapist is reflected in the relationship between the hypnotherapist and the supervisor. So the supervisor is trained to pick up that dynamic and maybe hold it up as a mirror to the hypnotherapist, for the hypnotherapist to maybe recognise it and look at it, because quite often it's outside of conscious awareness. So that's the key element, I suppose, that to me as to what supervision is. So Denis?
Yeah, and if as a hypnotherapist you are about to embark on the journey of supervision, make sure that you find a supervisor that you are comfortable working with. And I know when working in supervision, ideally you would find someone that you connect with, because that's where the greatest learning happens, when we connect with someone. So in our practice, people would either come to our premises for supervision, which is 1 hour every month, or we supervise through Skype, which is the same, it's 1 hour per month. What supervision is about is a place where you will come and you will present all your work, the good bits and the not so good bits. It's not a place where you will be judged, but it's a place where we work collaboratively with the people who present in supervision, all the time mindful that it's about the growth of the therapist. So we might challenge some of the work, but we might say, what's the learning from the challenge today, and how are you going to apply that next time you engage with your clients? So it's a safe place, it's a place of learning, it's a place of guidance, it's a place where we make sure you stay within ethical boundaries, within the ethics of the organisation you work for, and also where you go away feeling validated that you look forward to coming to supervision, that you prepare for supervision, and that you get something from it every day you come. It is never about being judged. It's always about working in a collaborative way, where we as supervisors work with you to help you to get the best out of you, that you can give the best to your clients.
Okay. So I suppose there are many different aspects to supervision, but Denis mentioned the ethical, monitoring ethical practice, and I suppose that overlaps very much so into quite often challenging I suppose presentations or pieces of information that come our way maybe around child protection issues. So, you don't want to find yourself in a situation where in hypnotherapy something's disclosed and then you don't know what to do with it, or you don't know how to manage it. So it's important, to have the supervisor there to kind of tease those bits out with you, to look at, what's actually real and true, or what is it that you might be assuming. So it's having that conversation with your supervisor that helps you to kind of clear it off for yourself, because it can be very heavy to carry that around. So that's one aspect, and then the other thing, I suppose, supervision is really the benefit of it is that it can quite often prevent burnout, because burnout happens unaware to ourselves. We're working away with our clients, we're picking up, I suppose, all the energies that they're bringing into the room, and the nature of our work is that, quite often it's the challenging stuff that they can't deal with, so we're absorbing that. So through supervision you'll recognise that, or the supervisor will recognise that, and it'll help you to find ways of managing and offloading that so that you're able to continue the work and not burn out.
And just to finish off there a bit on the contracting phase, when you engage with the supervisor, part of your first session would be drawing up a contract between the two people to see what times will work, when will work, when I'm available, what happens if something happens over a weekend, am I available, what happens if we fall out. All of this goes into the contract, plus our fee. It all gets negotiated up front, and generally we work for, say, let's work together for 3 sessions, and then we reevaluate, see how we're getting on, and then we plan for the future ahead, what your learning objectives might be, how can I help you, how can I guide you maybe in areas that you need maybe to do a bit more reading on or brush up on. So it's not in any way to say you're not doing good work. It's to take all the work, have a look at it, see how you handle it, and what are the best things that you can do with the information now that it's coming up in supervision, that you leave feeling, I have more information, I have better insights, I understand better how I work and the dynamic that's going on, and how will I use all that I've learned for the betterment of me and the client. So what supervision does, it kind of puts a kind of a safety net underneath you, that you are not working in isolation, that you don't have to carry burdens on your own, that there's someone there who is trained to take you through the difficult phases, but also to recognise when you're doing really good work and give you positive feedback on that as well.
And I suppose just to say, if we keep an eye on what's actually happening with regard to regulation in Ireland, with regard to psychological therapies, within counselling and psychotherapy at the moment, it's moving closer to regulation. And so what that means is that there's going to be a standard set by the government that will that people will have to have before they can actually call themselves a therapist. And so it's good, I suppose, in one way that hypnotherapy is actually moving forward, and that and supervision has been introduced into the trainings now, or to hypnotherapists, so that they can actually move with regulation and psychological therapies. So I think that's really important, and it's important to kind of, if you plan as a hypnotherapist to go into practice and make a living from this, you need to be meeting the guidelines and standards that will come into law in the next maybe year or two. So yeah, just it's important to note that.
Great, that's super.